Macmillan Audio presents The Gray Rhino, How to Recognize and React on the Obvious Dangers We Ignore, by Michele Wucker. Read for you by Christine Marshall and the author.
Hi, this is Michele Wucker. Preface. Visiting Buenos Aires in March 2001, it was hard not to see the approaching economic catastrophe. Closed signs hung on many shop doors. Taxi drivers carried on and on about the dire straits of the country, in terms that were dramatic, even allowing for the Argentine tendency for embellishment. The cover of the leading news magazine featured a picture of the controversial finance minister wearing a Hannibal Lecter mask, referencing the horror movie The Silence of the Lambs, and the question, did he have to cannibalize the country to save it? I had just come from the annual meeting of the Inter-American Development Bank in neighboring Chile, where bankers, ministers, and journalists furrowed their brows over Argentina's financial problems. The Chileans, no doubt, feeling somewhat smug, given their long-standing national rivalry with Argentina. If you'd seen the numbers, foreign debt rising, dollars leaving the country, reserves plummeting, expensive restructurings that padded bankers' pockets but didn't do much to help Argentina dig out of its hole, you had to know that there was no way Argentina could keep up. With its peso pegged to the dollar, it couldn't easily devalue the currency to jumpstart the economy. Investors were selling Argentine bonds en masse. Prices had fallen to what, in retrospect, was a still generous 80 cents on the dollar. But you didn't have to see the numbers to come to this conclusion. As a financial journalist specializing in Latin America, a few weeks later, I wrote about a proposal floated by a group of respected academics and Wall Streeters for Argentina and its creditors to reduce its debt by 30% in order to avoid a bigger, chaotic haircut or write-off later. After I published the article, several Wall Street bankers called me to say that this was what needed to happen, but they couldn't say so in public or they'd be fired. Even though traders spoke about Argentina's pending default as a matter of when rather than if, no bank dared tell its shareholders that it would be the first to voluntarily part with a single penny of what it was owed. 9 months later, the worst came true. Argentina's currency collapsed, and the banks that didn't want to give up 30% ended up losing roughly 70% of their money. Fast forward a decade to Greece. Like Argentina, Greece was trying to paper over its debt problem with a series of bailouts that only postponed the day of reckoning. Other European economies, though not so bad off as Greece, were struggling as well. In spring 2011, I published a paper for the New America Foundation, arguing that Greece needed to learn from Argentina's failure to recognize and respond to a highly probable financial catastrophe by restructuring its debt sooner, before it was too late. The reaction to the Greek problem was very different from the reaction to what had happened in 2001. This time, investors spoke openly, in public, about what needed to happen in Greece. That is, what Argentina should have done in 2001. It came down to the wire, but early in 2012, Greece's government and its private sector creditors came to an agreement that kept the country from defaulting on its private debt and bringing Europe and the global economy down with it. The country's government creditors were a different story, which would bring Greece and all of Europe to a new crisis in 2015. Later in 2011, the organizers of the Global HR Forum, a Korean organization focused on human resources challenges, asked me to attend their November conference.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?